Howdy again, it's tubalcain, and I'm back at the 12-inch Atlas Craftsman lathe, and this is Machine Shop Tips number 238, and it's entitled Picking Up a Thread on the Atlas Lathe. Now what does that mean? That means realigning your threading tool with the thread, partially finished or completed thread, and synchronizing it so you can continue cutting without tearing the thread up. Let me illustrate from this bird's eye view of what I mean by losing track of your thread, or getting the point of the tool out of alignment with the thread itself. And this can happen for many different reasons, but let me just show you what I mean here first. So I'm going to turn the lathe on, and you can see if I had fed the tool in all the way, I'd be knocking the thread off, just ruining the thread. So I'm going to show you how to realign it or pick up the thread. Now, why does that happen? It can happen for many reasons. And number one, it may happen through carelessness, and you really don't know why it happened, but as a novice, it may happen to you, and it's a mystery. In the school shop, students quite often pranked one another. I called it sabotage, and would just move the dials on one another. Or sometimes they couldn't finish the thread in one day, and when they come back the second day, the lathe had been tampered with, maybe bumped by a broom or no telling what. I used to have them throw a canvas or a tarp over the lathe so that couldn't happen, but often it did. And it happened so often, in fact, that I would sometimes 3, 4, 5 times an hour realign it for the kids, because for a beginning student who was just learning how to thread, picking up the thread was just a little bit too much, so I would do it for them. And it's rather easy once you know what you're doing. It's also much easier to do if the thread is only partially cut over it being fully cut, like this one. You may also from time to time come across repair work where you need to put a thread into the lathe and recut the thread or chase the thread because the thread has been damaged by rust or hammering or a wrench or misuse or whatever, but you want to chase the thread, and this technique of picking up the thread will allow you to do that as well. You can use this technique of picking up a thread when the machine is not running, especially if the thread is only partially completed. But when you're down to the final dimension, you really need to have the machine running, although it is more difficult to do. Also, this can be done on an internal thread that you're boring, but it is most difficult to do because you can't see what you're doing. But let me show you how I'm doing this. Now, I'm going to move the threading tool longitudinally right now, but I'm only manipulating the cross feed on the compound. I am not touching the carriage hand wheel, but watch the indicator, which I put on there just so you can see, understand what I'm doing, trying to align the tip of the tool with the thread. And again, I'm moving the compound and the cross feed until I basically get it into the thread. Let me back it out a little bit more and show you what I mean. Can you see how I'm moving it longitudinally? This is the thread that I cut in the previous video, and I'm going to realign the threading tool with the thread, even though this is at full depth. And it helps if you put a piece of white paper underneath so that the light comes through, or a white handkerchief such as this, as long as there's not too many boogers on it. Now I will have the half nut lever engaged and run the lathe very slow for this. I'm down to 45 RPM. If you've never done it before, slow it down even a little slower than that. And if you're 70 years old like me, wear your optimizer. Here we go. And I've only got a 1-inch distance to line it up. I'm engaging the half nut lever. and I'm lined up and ready to go and take another pass. Now it's virtually impossible to get it perfect because the cutting tool is probably going to cut more on either the left side or the right side, because in order for it to line up perfectly you'd have to be within a half a thousandth, and really what's the chances of you being able to do that by this method? I'm going to do the same thing one more time, and I've slowed the machine down to 28 RPM, I believe it is, the slowest speed in back gears, just to give myself a little more working time there. Also, I've caught I put the threading dial back on the lathe, and I've got it caught on a number, because it's 13 threads per inch, any number. And I'm ready to go, and then once it's lined up, I'm going to be able to use the threading dial again to take subsequent cuts. Here we go. Okay, I'm right in the cut and taking a very light cut. Let me also tell you now, as you're manipulating your compound and your crossfeed cranks, you must take the backlash out. That is, when I'm making my final adjustment, I'm feeding in, not feeding out, because the backlash would introduce errors later on when you take your next cut. I'm going to make another thread right here in this section. I put another undercut in here, and I've changed the pitch to 20 threads per inch, so this will be 1/2 20. And I do not intend to cut this to full depth, but I'm just going to do a scratch cut here so that you can see how easy it is to align it if you're not to full depth. So let me go ahead and make a scratch cut. And this is 20 threads per inch, so you can see that it's quite a bit finer. Now, as you can see, I've lost my place, and I want to pick up that thread. Now, in the case where the thread is not to full depth yet, I prefer to just do this with the machine turned off. But remember that you still have to use your threading dial. I'm going to catch that on a number. Now I'm going to stop the machine and just very quickly move that into position, just like that, and zero out the dial, and I can continue the cut. The dial is zeroed. So you can see I'm in the groove, so to speak. I'm ready to continue this cut now, and I've zeroed out the dial on the crossfeed, not to be confused with the threading dial, and I'll catch the thread on a number, or it could be a number or a line for an even number of threads such as this, and I will feed the compound in a little more so I have more of a depth of cut. And if I was slightly off now, it just doesn't matter, because I'm going to be close enough to being in the center of the thread that it won't make any difference as I continue my thread. So I'm feeding in the compound a little bit, and I'm ready to go. So I've shown you two different ways of doing it, with the machine running and with the machine static. Now go back and watch this video several times if you need to, and I hope that I explained this clearly enough so that you can do it. And that completes this short video on picking up a thread. This is tubalcain saying so long for now, and I'll see you in my next video.